Hello, this is Asa from Berroco with a new video for our mystery blanket knit along. In this video, I'll be sharing some tips for seaming. So first of all, if you're ready to assemble your blanket, congratulations, and I hope you've enjoyed the squares and maybe learned a thing or two in the process. As you know, the blanket uses a lot of different stitch patterns and also different directions of knitting. So I'm going to show you how to work just a few of those seams, starting with a vertical seam. Here we have two blocks that are worked in the same direction, like this. So this is the same type of seam that you would have at the sleeve or side of a sweater, so it's a good one to learn. You are going to lay the pieces out in front of you, and you need to cut a piece of yarn that's about 3 times the length of the seam. And of course you want to choose yarn color from one of the pieces. So I have this one here. Now, if you were working a sweater, you would probably have the same number of rows in your seam. Because we're using different stitch patterns, that's not necessarily the case here. So I'm going to show you how to pin the pieces. Start by finding the center of your seam. Use an interlocking stitch marker. Put that on there. Now do the same thing to the other seam. And pin the two pieces together. This just makes helps you get an even seam so that it doesn't end up bunching in the beginning or end. So there we have our centers. Now we can line up the ends and just gently pull and put another one here in the middle somewhere. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. There we go. That'll just help guide the seam a little bit. Now, starting at the bottom, you want to find the first stitch after the cast on. So you can see the column of stitches going up here. We're going to be seaming just between the first and second stitch. So I'm going to go all the way to the bottom and grab just that one stitch from the back to the front and pull the yarn through. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So we have to start in the darker blue just a little bit, but that's fine. So you see you have the first column and the second column here. Pull that all the way through to join the pieces. Now go back to this side, insert the needle where it came out from. And if you poke around a little bit, you're going to see in between the two columns of stitches, you have these bars that connect the stitches. We're going to grab 2 of those bars, going up 2 stitches, and pull through. Now going back to the other side. Again, finding where the yarn came out and grabbing 2 bars. Pull that through. So we're just going to be doing this going back and forth. You can leave the stitches kind of loose. Now we're getting into the lighter blue color. So you can see here how the yarn is going back and forth in between. Now I'm going to tighten that up. And you can, as you see, the columns of the stitches just get pulled right next to each other. So it gives a really neat finish. You don't want to pull too tight because knitting is stretchy, so we want the seam to have some stretch too. Now going back to this side. 1, 2. Again, every few stitches, just tighten it up a little bit, but not too much. Again, just like that. Okay, so we're gonna keep going. If you notice that you have more bulk on the one side than on the other, just go ahead and grab just 1 bar instead of the 2 on the side that's a little tighter. That way you can even out the rows in your seam. I think these are pretty even, but just in case. Okay, and we're doing pretty well here, so I'm just gonna remove these as I come to them. And that's our vertical seam. So you can see how nice it looks on the front, and it just gives this little edge on the back side. Next up is a horizontal seam. These blocks were worked from the outer edge in the round into the center. So we'll be joining the cast on edge to the cast on edge here. This is also a good seam to know. It's what you would use at the shoulder of a sweater. And I'm gonna start by just finding the corner stitch here. And again, pulling the yarn through from the back to the front. We'll do the same thing at the other side. Okay. Now we'll go back in. We'll grab both legs of one stitch and pull through. Do the same thing here. Both legs of one stitch just above the cast on edge. It's a little tricky to find them at the very corner, but it gets easier when you get a few stitches in. I did not pin this one because I know there's the same number of stitches in each square, so I'm not going to bother pinning them. I'm just going to work the stitches 1-to-1 ratio, but if you wanted to pin it, you certainly could. Here, and I'm going to pull this beginning of the seam tight and then loosen it up a little bit. And you'll see that the stitches of the seam create like a row of stitches here. So it'll join them together really nicely. Next stitch. That's what it looks like. So this is what the finished seam looks like. And here's the reverse side of it. Next, we'll be seaming 2 blocks where the stitches are at a perpendicular angle to each other. You'll see this texture block here is worked from the bottom up, and this block here is worked from the outside into the center. So you have stitches on this side to rows on this side. You can also see that this edge is a little less stretchy than this one here, is quite loose. I'm not worried about it because I can see that the blocks themselves are pretty close to the same size. But when we're working stitches to rows, I know that the ratio is not going to be anywhere near 1:1, so I do want to pin this one pretty good. And like before, I'm going to start by finding the center. Next, we'll join the corner. And it really makes it easier to find the middle if you just stretch it out a little bit. There. Just to make it even. Yarn. I might put an extra pin here just to make it a little easier to see, just in the middle here. There we go. Okay, so like before, I'm gonna find the first stitch above the cast on edge, and we're going to be working on this side. We're going to be working in between the first 2 columns of stitches right here. And for this block, finding that corner stitch and going in from the back to the front. Okay. I'm going to start with 2 bars on the one side, 1 stitch on the other side. Bars. And I'm keeping an eye on my markers here so that I can adjust it as needed. Stitch. And so next I'm gonna do just a 1 bar. Let's pull that tight and loosen it up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now I can move this one away. So I'm working every stitch on the right side here, and on this side I'm working through 2 bars, and about every third time I do 1 bar only, and that's a pretty good ratio for this one. But that's gonna change depending on the stitch pattern, so it's not always going to be the same. Usually when you're working rows to stitches in stockinette stitch, that's a pretty good ratio. The stitch markers help keep track of it. So for this block, I'm working every stitch on this side here, and I'm working either 2 bars or 1 bar on the left side here. The stitch markers really help you find the ratio because the different stitch patterns, it's going to not always be the same between the different blocks. This is working out pretty well. There we go. That's what the seam looks like on the front and on the back. A few of the cable blocks have reverse stockinette stitch right on the edge where you're going to be seaming. That just means that the purl bumps are on the front of the fabric. You're going to seam those just the same. It may just be a little trickier to see where to put your needle. So on this side, we work just as before into the stockinette. And on the purl side, if you just put your needle in just where the yarn came out, point it straight up, you should find those bars that join the stitches there. So you're going to grab them just the same as you did on the stockinette stitch. We'll do a few more. So again, put the needle in just where the yarn came out, point it straight up, and you can see that you have the one column of edge stitches right there, and you grab the 2 bars in between. There, that's what that seam is going to look like. These are some of the seams you'll use to assemble your blanket, and I hope this video is helpful as you get started with that. Seaming an entire blanket takes a bit of time, so make sure you're sitting somewhere comfortable and that you have good lighting, and remember to take breaks. If you're doing your blanket at all different from the one in the picture, I recommend laying out your pieces before you get started and take a picture of them for reference. You're going to sew up all your squares into strips like this, and when that's done, you're going to sew the strips together into the blanket. As you do that, make sure to pin the corners just to make sure you get them nice and square. And you can use the tails of yarn if you need to tighten them up. That's about it. Happy seaming!